The universe has been expanding for an estimated 13.7 billion years. If we compress that entire cosmic timeline into a single calendar year, the earliest Homo sapiens wouldn't arrive until less than 12 minutes before midnight. For almost all of our history, our physical bodies have remained consistent. Look at this progression of hominid skulls. It took millions of years for natural selection to slowly reshape this bone structure and house the 100 trillion synaptic connections that make up the modern human brain. Biology operates on a geologic timescale. 2.5 million years ago, our ancestors started striking flint against quartz to produce sharp flakes. This was the birth of cultural technology, the ability to create instruments and pass that knowledge down to the next generation. This created a divergence. While our biological hardware stayed static, the capability of our tools began to compound. Computing power now doubles roughly every 2 years, shifting from a low baseline into an abrupt vertical climb. Projections indicate that within a few decades, computers will match the processing capacity of the human brain. By the year 2050, artificial general intelligence is expected to outpace human cognition. We are building the conditions to become the second smartest entities on the planet. To remain purely biological is to risk obsolescence against a curve that is moving faster than our DNA can replicate. Avoiding this gap requires a material merger between our slow-moving bodies and our fast-moving technology. For most of our history, technology has lived strictly outside of us. We built machines, but we piloted them from a distance. A tractor, a smartphone, or a hammer sit separate from our biology. Today, that distance is closing. We have engineered hydraulic exoskeletons that wrap around our limbs, granting a single person superhuman strength. We are still wearing the machine, but the boundary is beginning to blur. The next phase moved the technology across the skin barrier. This shift was initially driven by medical necessity, the requirement to map and repair biological systems from the inside. When doctors use an MRI to see inside your body, they rely on specialized contrast agents. You ingest or inject these minerals so the machine can track your internal networks. The technology requires a physical, material integration with your bloodstream. The progression continues with articulated prosthetic limbs wired into our nervous system. By connecting motors and titanium directly to human nerves, we are moving from repairing a deficit to establishing new physiological functions. The physical migration of hardware under the skin marks a transition. We are shifting from evolutionary subjects into active biological engineers. The final frontier of this proximity progression is the brain itself. Initiatives like DARPA's Restoring Active Memory program are testing deep brain electrodes right now. They record the electrical activity used to form a memory and use neural stimulation devices to amplify those signals. We are successfully bridging the gap between gray matter and silicon. Mapping these connections allows us to move beyond memory repair. A high-bandwidth neural implant could theoretically feed new sensory inputs directly into the visual cortex, enabling us to detect ultraviolet light or telepathically query a global database. If these neural chips are linked wirelessly, individual minds could share data instantly. This would create a shared cognitive network, a hive mind where human intelligence is distributed across multiple nodes. By plugging the neocortex into the cloud, the boundary separating biological thought from machine calculation disappears. Philosopher Nick Bostrom describes the technological completion conjecture, the principle that if a specific capability is physically possible, humanity will eventually build the technology to achieve it. We are applying this logic to our DNA. With CRISPR, we can already cut and paste genetic code to treat single mutation diseases. As we master the editing of complex traits, we gain the power to rewrite our biology for environments we were never meant to inhabit. A Mars colony requires adaptations that natural selection cannot provide in time. We are researching genetic modifications to prevent muscle atrophy in low gravity and splicing in resistance to radiation borrowed from extreme organisms like the cockroach. On Earth, these same gene editing tools could harden the human form against extreme climate disasters. We could engineer crash-proof bodies with reinforced rib cages and thicker skulls designed to protect the brain from massive blunt force impact. When we gain the ability to choose our traits before birth and modify our bodies for hostile climates, we hijack the mechanisms of genetic inheritance. We have shifted from an era of passive evolution to one of deliberate, engineered design. we are looking at a complete anatomical redesign. To solve the biological flaws of human childbirth, researchers like Dr. Alice Roberts suggest we could adopt a marsupial-style birthing pouch, while simultaneously enlarging the ears to pull in more sound as we age. We could separate the breathing and eating pipes to remove the risk of choking, or borrow octopus DNA to allow our skin to change pigment for camouflage and UV protection. This diagram charts the proximity progression. We spent hundreds of thousands of years in the first block, holding external tools. Over just the last few decades, that technology migrated to the surface of our skin, and then into our internal biology. The trajectory moves toward a final convergence point, the singularity. This is the moment where machine intelligence outpaces our own, and the physical distinction between the two disappears. If these trends continue, the purely biological human is not the conclusion of our story. We are the architects of the transition, building the engineered species that will follow.